Civil engineers use a tool called cash flow diagrams to analyze the finances of public works projects. Typically, a cash flow diagram organizes all the exchanges of money over time. And that's so that we can understand the payoffs for expensive public works projects. That is, public works projects cost a lot of money up front and they yield benefits over time. To understand whether a particular public works project is a good investment or not, we need to understand the relationship between the costs of the project and the benefits over time. The cash flow diagram is the way we organize the information to do that analysis. The South Mountain Freeway in Phoenix, Arizona is a terrific example of an analysis of investment in public works. The Arizona DOT completed an extensive environmental impact statement, as is befitting a $2 billion project, and it included an economic analysis that allows us to understand how to arrange cash flow diagrams and analyze return on investment. Typically, the costs are listed below the line, the timeline in the cash flow diagram, and the benefits are listed above. I'm going to take you through this abbreviated analysis of the environmental impact statement that the Arizona DOT created so that we can organize these costs and benefits. The first costs that might be obvious to you are the construction, but there's also the land acquisition and the maintenance of the highway. So how are we going to get a handle on what the highway costs to build? Fortunately, we have data available from the DOT. This is at the Federal Highway Administration, .dot.gov, and it explains what the highway costs and how it's financed. In this case, they're estimating the cost of the highway at $1.84 billion. And where does that come from? Most of it, not most of it, a substantial chunk of it comes from the federal government. This is in the form of a grant that does not need to be repaid. The state of Arizona contributes fuel taxes, vehicle license taxes, funds from registration fees. All of these come from the State Highway Revenue Fund, and that's about $206 million. Then there's a sales tax that funds $700 million. And finally, they're going to borrow $435 million. These are bonds. This is borrowing by selling bonds, and it has to be paid back. But it doesn't say where the funds to pay back the money that they're borrowing in the form of bonds is going to come from. What's also interesting is that these costs include the design, include the building, and include the maintenance. Building here means construction. It simplifies our job because the 1.837 includes the engineering, the construction, and the maintenance. So in our cash flow diagram, these costs, design, construction, maintenance, and I don't know if that federal highway number includes land acquisition, but we're going to call it all 1.837 billion. There are other costs, and those include lost property taxes and lost sales taxes. Now, how does that work? In the environmental impact assessment, the analysis includes land acquisition that moves from private to public hands. And when it moves from private hands to public hands, it's no longer subject to property taxes. As a result, those tax revenues are no longer available to the governments in which the property resides. Some of those are businesses, and the sales taxes that would have been collected from those properties that are now moved into the public right-of-way, those sales taxes don't exist because the land has been repurposed from private to public highway purposes. Okay, so let's take a look at how the environmental impact statement has organized the property and sales tax losses. We're going to start with the sales taxes. There is a table you can see this on 4.6 in the environmental impact statement, which is available at azdot.gov. And the table includes lots of different alternatives because at the time this was done, there were different configurations of the highway and they would have had different land acquisition consequences. We're going to look in particular at W59 with the eastern section option. When you buy the land for the W59 option, these are the estimated or modeled impacts on land use that result in reduced sales tax revenues. 1.9 million a year in commercial and industrial sales taxes, plus another 138K a year from the eastern option. Add these two up and you get the present day impact on sales tax. This is the reduced sales tax collected. But then the environmental impact statement does something interesting. They say the way it is right now is not necessarily how it would stay forever. They say that the area around Phoenix is subject to growth, and because these sales tax revenues are based upon 2013, 2014, the time at which the analysis was done, but the highway is extremely long-lived, you can't go just by these numbers. They're saying in the future, those numbers will be higher. Here's 7.7 million a year, and here from the eastern extension, another 3.3 million a year. And so these are future lost sales taxes. What the report does not say is what's the ramp up from the present day estimate to the future. Over what time frame and what is the shape of the curve during which or through which these present day sales taxes lost would be expected to grow to the future lost sales taxes. You'll have to decide when you do the analysis. At what point in the future are they talking? You can read the text for yourself. And what is the shape of that growth? That's how you're going to model it in your cash flow diagram. Similarly, we can do the same thing for property taxes. The environmental impact assessment includes a table for the existing, this is the present, local annual property tax revenues lost, they're saying reductions, from land acquisition. Here's the W59 at 2 million a year and the eastern extension at another 500,000 a year. Add those up and you get the existing. They also estimate the future, and they estimate the future to be higher, 5.8 million a year with another 1.7 million a year. And this calls upon you to do the exact same thing for lost property taxes. That is, go from existing to future by interpolating along that growth curve. So now we're summarizing our costs. There is design, construction, land acquisition, maintenance. There's lost property taxes, both existing and future. There's lost sales taxes, existing and future. And hopefully you're understanding by now that these projections are not an exact science, that there's room for interpretation, estimation, and modeling in the guesswork that is required when we're talking about projecting future costs. What about the benefits? There are no tolls on the South Mountain Freeway. There are no estimated increases in property taxes due to development, no estimated increases in sales taxes due to development around or associated with the freeway, not included in the environmental impact statement. The principal benefit is reduced congestion. The argument here is that the new highway that goes around the south and southwest of Phoenix will reduce the amount of time that drivers spend in traffic jams. That may or may not be true, but that's the argument in the environmental impact statement, and they include this table that shows us what those benefits might be. Here's time, and in a cash flow diagram, we know that would be the horizontal axis, but in this table, it goes from 2020, the highway is now open, to 2035. They're projecting 15 years of reduced congestion. You could dispute that. You could extend that. You can use your judgment to improve their model, but this is what they've reported for us. When we look at the W59E1 option, the projected benefits, and they explain the method in the report, but the projected benefits from reduced congestion are expected to grow to 13.2 hours reduced, that is, hours that is no longer spent in traffic jams. How does that 13.2 million hours no longer spent in traffic jams translate into dollars? Well, they put a dollar figure on it, and it averages out to a little under $20 an hour. They estimate that by the 2035, motorists are going to save the equivalent of $248 million a year. When the highway first opens, it's only $173 million a year, and then it grows. What they do is add up all of these in a single column, and that is a mistake. We're not interested in 2035 dollars in the same way that we are interested in 2020 dollars. The further the dollars go out in the future, the less they are worth today. But for the purposes of the cash flow diagram, we can map each one of these onto our benefits curve. Time, 248 million, and that's in 2035. But here in, say, 2028, the W59E1 is 213 million. And here in 2020, it's 173 million. You can see how once we go from the table to the cash flow diagram, we're able to graphically represent the benefits of the highway against, here's the big cost, here's the lost revenues, the costs. Later on in the class, in the assignment, after we've understood how to organize all of the cash flow benefits and costs in a cash flow diagram, we'll go over how to do the net present value analysis that compares these two and determines whether this is a worthwhile public investment.